Hi, I'm Deboki, and this is Okie Dokie Boki, and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I went into this video just thinking it would be nice and cool, relaxed. But then I looked over the list of questions for the tag and then looked at the list of books that I had read this year, and I realized that this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. I keep the list of books that I read in a notebook. I just write them out. And looking through this is my ranking. I was actually surprised by how many books that I've given 4 or 5 stars, because looking back now on some of the books from the beginning of the year, I'm kind of like, her? Really? Where it's just they've been books that I've read and maybe at the moment I enjoyed them, but even a few months or a few weeks later, they just haven't stuck with me. I don't know, maybe I'm just grading everything on a curve this year. Maybe everything is terrible, or maybe everything is actually good. Who knows? All I know is that freak out is the right word for it, because thinking about these questions, I was like, crap, what have I been doing with my reading this year? But I am still making myself do this tag, A, because I need to film something, and B, because I guess it's good for me to try to think through this. I like to overthink things. I think a lot of us do on BookTube, so I might as well overthink this. Question number 1 is, what is the best book you've read so far this year? So far this year, I have given 3 books 5 stars out of 5. The first is The Scientific Literature, A Guided Tour by Joseph E. Harmon and Ala G. Gross. The next is Check Please by Ngozi Uzaku. And the third is The Soldier Scoundrel by Cat Sebastian. The Scientific Literature, A Guided Tour, is an overview of scientific publishing, starting with its origins in Europe, and going through how it was organized both as a system, as an institution, but also as a writing form. It basically takes you through different periods of history of science, through specific scientific papers that are used as examples to show you how things have been written, how things have been illustrated or over time photographed, and how those things have combined over time to shape the way that scientists talk to each other, how they talk to the public. Just changes in communicating science, which for me is very, 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 very much up my alley. So I have had this book on my shelves for several years at this point. If you need proof that you too can get to a book that's been on your TBR for years, this is your proof. I got to it and it paid off. It was great. I learned a lot. If you're someone who's interested in these concepts, I think you'll find it really interesting. While it does have examples from technical papers, it doesn't itself get too muddled in technical details. And there were papers from subjects that I don't really know that much about, but I thought the authors did a good job of introducing them so that you could get what you needed to out of the example. I'm going to actually talk about Check Please in a later question, so I'm going to get back to it and not really talk about it right now. The other book that I mentioned that I gave 5 stars was The Soldier Scoundrel, which is written by Cat Sebastian. The Soldier Scoundrel is Soldier Scoundrel is the first book in the series that book is a part of. It's about Oliver Rivington, who is a soldier who gets caught up in shenanigans with a scoundrel named Jack Turner. The two find themselves at odds with each other about the law and what they think the role of law is, a lot of which is correlated to their class. Oliver is an upper class person, so his idea of the law is shaped in part by that, but also by his experiences in war. So it's not just that he believes in law because he benefits from it. He believes in law because of things that he's seen. He's just also blind to the way that his privilege operates in that overall schema. Number 2, best sequel you've read so far, and I think I'm going to have to give this to King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo, which is honestly kind of by default. It's one of the few sequels I've read this year, and I'm not quite clear if I can actually call it a sequel. I guess kind of technically it isn't, because it's the first in a duology, but it is part of her ongoing Grishaverse series, so I still feel like it should count as a sequel. I don't know, if you're gonna divide your series up into trilogies and duologies and whatever that all connect to each other, I feel okay with calling one of the books in a later series a sequel to books in an earlier part of the series. I did a full review of King of Scars, which I'll link to below. This is, like I said, one of the Grishaverse series. It takes up the story of Nikolai and Zoya after the events of the first series, where they're basically now in this new Ravka that they're like, they have to try to maintain political stability in, while Nikolai is dealing with some very, very literal internal instability. There's a lot of things that have changed about that country politically and magically, I guess, and they're dealing with the fallout of that. And I came into this book with full indifference towards both of these characters and came out fully in love with them. But I did also have issues with the overall structure of it, which I think comes down in large part to the fact that it's a duology. So I will continue to read everything Leigh Bardugo writes, as we'll get to later, but like I was a little bit frustrated by this book, even though I'm guessing that I'll love the next book in the duology. Number 3, a new release you haven't read yet but want to get to. One of my goals this year was to actually read a newly published book from each month, and I am like 99% sure, even though I haven't really kept good track of this goal, that I'm doing really badly at it. With that said, here is a very abbreviated list of books that I have fully planned on reading when they came out, but just for whatever reason haven't gotten to yet, or that I've started, and again, for some reason haven't finished yet. So these books are An Unconditional Freedom by Alyssa Cole, The Bird King by G. Willow Wilson, The True Queen by Zen Cho, An Elegant Defense, The Extraordinary New Science of the Immune System by Matt Richtel, Figuring by Maria Popova, Evie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes. So yeah, there's a lot. Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I am basic and my list is basic. I think basically if you take a poll of booktubers and like books they're anticipating for the rest of the second half of the year, they will overlap greatly with the list I'm about to tell you. So I don't think I've actually read the summary yet for Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, but I know I want to read it, in part because I will, like I said, read almost anything she writes, and B, I think because I'm excited to see what she does outside of the YA category. I also have no idea what The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern is, but I love The Night Circus, so I'm going to be there with everyone else. I'm also really excited for The Right Swipe by Alicia Rai. This one I have actually read the summary for, so I do know what it's going to be about, and that enhances the fact that I am excited for it, on top of the fact that I love Alicia Rai's romance novels. Number 5, biggest disappointments. By far the biggest disappointment, though I'm not actually sure I can call it a disappointment because I kind of almost half anticipated it, what is Nama's Kiss by Jacqueline Carey. One of my other reading goals for the year is to finish Jacqueline Carey's Terre d'Ange series. So this is that trilogy of trilogies. The first is the Kushil's Dart series, which is centered around Phaedra. It's a whole fantasy world. There's a whole thing about it. I'll link to my reading goals video below if you want to know more about the series, because I talk about why I'm interested in doing this goal. Phaedra's trilogy, as I've said a bajillion times on my channel, is like one of my favorite series ever. The second trilogy, Imriel's trilogy, I had a hard time getting into, but I actually ended up reading it towards the end of last year and enjoyed it more than I thought I would, which made me want to decide to basically complete the series, which is to read this third trilogy called Moirin's trilogy. I don't know if it's officially called that. Anyways, colloquially, Moirin's trilogy. It takes place centuries after the other ones, and I did not like it. Moirin, the main character, basically catches superpowers like, I don't know, like they're the common cold. They just seem to come to her. And there's just something about the book that just never clicked for me. Things just kind of like happen to her. She just kind of goes along. I don't know, it just did not come together. The issues with magic that start to arise over the course of the other previous books are in full force in this book, and I'm having a hard time with it. I'm gonna finish the series because it's still one of my goals, and I want to be able to fully, I don't know, form a full thought about why the series starts out so strong and becomes so frustrating. And to do that, I'm gonna have to read all of them, but I will also still be disappointed. Unless I get lucky and she turns it around and the last 2 books are actually really good. Number 6, the biggest surprise. So for this, I have to say Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. I'm going to be doing a full review of this, so I will get like more fully into my thoughts around this book. But for what I'll say for this tag video, I went into this book with like kind of pretty minimal expectations. It's got a beautiful cover. It has like courtly intrigue and mystery in the summary, which is like cool way to draw me in. But I also kind of prejudged it and was like, I feel like it's gonna be too good to be true. Like that beautiful cover, that perfect of a summary for me. Like, something's gotta give. And that's like a pretty cynical approach to reading. I don't recommend it. But I'm really glad I read it because I ended up fully engrossed in the mystery. I loved the characters, and by the end of it, I was surprised by how much I really want a sequel. So I would have to recommend that book. Number 7, favorite new author. I think for this I'm gonna have to go with Cat Sebastian, which, like, I guess technically she's not new, but like I feel like she is new because I feel like I'm properly discovering her. I had read one of her books before, wasn't crazy about it, but like now I feel like I'm actually reading her books correctly and like kind of discovering her for the first time as a result. Number 8, newest fictional crush. This one was hard. I don't know, I haven't really read many characters that I feel like deserve that title. I think I kind of like the idea of Songjin from Descendant of the Crane. He's like this soldier brother to the main character Hasina. He's like pretty loyal and competent, which, like, I don't know, my bar is low. I'm pretty cool with both of those traits. But I think he's probably also kind of young. Like, I don't know, this is the problem with reading YA, where you're like reading people do things like very grown up things and you're like, shit, they're probably like 17. I have no idea. If he is like younger than like 22, then like A, he's got his shit way too together, and B, that's gross and I don't want to call him a crush. So I don't know. I don't have one. Number 9, newest favorite character. Part of my ongoing theme of Cat Sebastian right now is really working for me. I'm currently reading The Lawrence Brown Affair, which is the book after The Soldier Scoundrel, and I am very into Georgie Turner, who is this con man turned secretary who's sort of developing a conscience, which he's like super not comfortable with, and it's like kind of like what is going on. He's very fun but slick but angsty, but like I don't know, it's like a really great combination where like he's clearly like the cleverest person in the room but also like doesn't entirely have his shit together, which is kind of a fun dynamic to read. Number 10, books that made you cry. I don't know if it made me cry, but I read Princess Barry by Hong Suk-young recently. This is a magical realism coming of age story that features a refugee from North Korea who ends up in China and then London. Her name is Barry, and her story is kind of woven through with the tale of her namesake, Princess Barry. This is another book that I'm going to be doing a review for, and then that should be up in the next few weeks. But one of the core parts of the story, because she's a refugee, is the story of the challenges of making that journey and also setting up a life away from, you know, from what she knew as a child. There's some things that the author does to sort of both bring you in but also create a distance between like the very intense challenges that she's facing, and so I think it's maybe one of the more intense books that I've read. Number 11, a book that made you happy, and this is where Check Please is coming in. This is by far the most wholesome book I've read this year. This was actually originally a webcomic that was turned into a graphic novel. This book is about Eric Little, who goes by Biddy. He is a hockey player with a YouTube channel, and he is basically the sweetest character ever. He's like obsessed with making pies. He's like super naive and sweet, but he also clearly has like a backbone. I just fully was like, you are the most pleasant thing in the world right now when I was reading this book. Over the course of the book, he develops a crush on his captain, so there's a very sweet romance that comes into play as well. It's just one of those books that was really hard to read without smiling. If you're looking for something that's like really cute and fun, highly recommend Check Please. Number 12, most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. In my case, borrowed from the library. I love the cover for Descendant of the Crane. I just think it's really stunning. Princess Barry as well. I don't know, I'm a sucker for that kind of style. I also really like the cover for Figuring. It's yellow and minimal. Number 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? All of them. I mean, for my goals, I definitely need to finish reading the Nama's Kiss or whatever series, and like so many. So hopefully by the end of the year, it will not be like as much of a struggle to fully recap and figure out what I loved about my reading and what I didn't. But for now, this was like a good exercise in checking in to see kind of like what it is that's not standing out. Maybe like characters, maybe I just haven't seen that many characters who I'm really invested in. But I think that'll start changing. I believe in my reading. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and yeah, bye.